Hi, this is Matt Caffrey. Welcome to Connections 2021. And it's my privilege today to introduce the person who will be welcoming you. I've been doing this since '93, and I've had a chance to introduce folks from Dr. Schlesinger to James Dunnigan to Peter Perla, and it's always a great treat. I am very, very impressed by Major General Don Hill's resume and his background. This guy has commanded units from the company to brigade level. His most recent combat command was the 2nd Special Forces Assistance Brigade in Afghanistan. It was his second combat command inside Afghanistan. He's now wearing 3 hats. He's the provost of Army University, the deputy commandant for the Command and General Staff College. On top of all that, he's also the deputy commanding general for the Combined Arms Center. So it is my high honor and great privilege to give to you Major General Don Hill.
Hey, thanks, Matt. I appreciate that intro. I do want to make one slight clarification. It was 2nd Security Force Assistance Brigade. I don't want any of the Special Forces folks out there to start atting me or sending me some hate mail, but I do appreciate that intro, and it is truly an honor for me to be here today and talking to everybody here at Connections 2021. And I got a couple of comments, some things to lead in for this, and then at the end, I think we've got enough time. If anybody's got some questions, I'll attempt to answer them. If I don't know the answer, I'll either make something up or I'll defer to Matt, or I got my able assistant here, Lieutenant Colonel John Lord, who runs our program here at the college. So first of all, welcome to everybody. Good morning. It's morning here in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. It's a beautiful morning. It was 100 degrees over the weekend. It was 56 this morning. So in Kansas, what they say is if you don't like the weather, just wait a few minutes and it'll change. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I know we've got a worldwide audience, but really do appreciate everybody being here. This is the first time that the Connections has been hosted by the Command General Staff College. So it's an honor for us to be able to do that. It's also the first time west of the Mississippi. It's amazing when you cross that giant river how much your perspective changes. So I'm sure that'll probably help inform this Connections this time, and look forward to trying to host this again in the future. And I was just talking to John, we got to start planning now for the bicentennial of Kriegspiel, because we need to make that a big Connections and need to have that live wherever we're going to host that. For everybody, the purpose of this conference continues to be to reshape and invigorate the general use of wargaming. I'm going to talk about how we do that here in the college and in the United States Army, but also as well as to promote the art and science of wargaming in all domains. I mean, what started just under 200 years ago on a two-dimensional a map there with some die and some tools and things like that. It's really morphed as warfare has morphed, and it's evolved to meet the demands of the modern force. And so I think it's great that we've got this Connections going, so we can continue to make sure that it continues to evolve. As far as wargaming here at the Command General Staff College, the Joint Staff has acknowledged the importance of wargaming, and we've got some specific guidance that was given to us in 2020 on professional military education to focus on outcomes-based military education. And part of that encourages the use of live, virtual, constructive, and gaming methodologies with war games and exercises involving multiple sets and repetitions to achieve program learning outcomes. So, the Department of Defense, the Joint Staff has recognized the significance and the importance of wargaming, and they've literally written it into the doctrine for professional military education across the Joint Force. And so wargaming serves here at the college as one of the many direct assessment tools. I mean, this is a college. We do grades, we give degrees, and so you got to do an assessment. You got to make sure people are making the cut, and so we use war games to help us with that. We use wargaming school-wide to promote and expand education through experiential learning. I mean, we get officers. It's the top half of a year group of officers, roughly 1,000 majors, captain promotables, and majors from across the Army, all compos. The regular Army, the Guard, the Reserve. We have sister services. Usually we have over 100 international military students. And so we use wargaming to really expand that educational experience that they get here for about 10 months when they attend the college. We use computerized and tabletop war games as major exercise drivers. And one of the things that I think is different for a lot of the students when they come here is, we use a game we call Land Power. It's an analog game. It's the game everyone would identify. It's map on a table. You got little tokens and pieces representing units of various echelons, and we roll dice. And it is the classical war game. And that's generally what the current generation's not used to. They're used to the big sims and the computer things that the Army uses. So that's a tool that we've evolved over the years, and we really like it because it gives us things that the simulations don't give, and it really helps that educational process to show this modern generation that there's other ways to skin a cat, other ways to apply the lessons learned here. Wargaming is an integral part of the military decision-making process, which is how we solve problems in the Army. So course of action analysis, we do a wargaming piece of that. So it's integral to how we solve problems. We also, here in the college, we use commercial off-the-shelf war games for electives, and I got to sit in on. They were using Kriegspiels when I went down there to watch, but they got everything from squad leader to command and conquer, whatever you want. We've got a library that's got all that stuff. We got 3D printers. We make our own little representatives of whatever it is that we want to war game. And so we use that for the electives, and it's not just our simulations folks that take the electives. It's folks, like I said, international students, sister service, basic branch combat arms folks, as well as some of the specialty branches that we've got. And that's something that they choose to take because they see it in the Common Core, and then they get exposed to it as the advanced operations course. And then they say, hey, I really like this. I want to take the elective. So it's integral to everything that we do. And so let's talk about how we got that at CGSC. We've been around since about 1881. The school was established by General Sherman in 1881. And in the 90s, one of the instructors here got to observe the German Army, and he saw Kriegspiel in use, by the originals. And he was like, wow, that's kind of cool. And he saw the benefit of, writing the short orders, the concise orders that those situations drove in the officers to be able to communicate effectively as they built a plan. And so this guy, Eben Swift, he built some series here that he gave at the college. He published a book, Lyceum at Agawam, in 1897. And then from that, the college really adopted the model of saying, hey, we want to do terrain exercises without troops. We want a war game. They introduced Kriegspiel. They started learning how to adjudicate these things. And it really laid the groundwork for the pre-World War I officer corps to be able to use wargaming and to do that military decision-making process and integrate wargaming into that. This evolved in the interwar period, and it really culminated in, for all the historians out there, the Louisiana maneuvers in the early 40s, 41, which was, war game on a grand scale. It wasn't on a board. It was Louisiana because they did it across Louisiana, East Texas, the southeast down there. So true war games in a massive scale. And during World War II, it was just part and parcel of all of the plans and operations that we did. Every large scale operation, pick a theater, they war gamed it because that was one of the things that they learned here at Leavenworth. And so it was just part and parcel of how we operated as an Army. So let's fast forward to the 21st century. And some of you all remember Secretary of Defense Mattis, retired General Mattis. He referred to 25 bloodless battles. is the key to building more lethal formations across our military. And so that's wargaming our bloodless battles. We do it, not quite the Louisiana maneuvers, but we do it in real live conditions from the brigade level on down. And they culminate at our combat training centers. You're probably familiar with the National Training Center in Southern California. That's one of them. And so those are war games on that live scale. But the complexities in the scale of potential multi-domain, large-scale combat operations in an era of great power competition, that's just so big. It's too expensive to replicate that except through wargaming. If we tried to do the Louisiana maneuvers today, we'd bankrupt the Army and probably bankrupt the country. We just can't afford it. And we probably piss a lot of people off if we're driving M1 tanks around Louisiana these days. And so wargaming helps us mitigate those costs. But it's not just cost effective. It is also critical to getting those sets and reps that the Joint Staff told us we needed to get in various conditions that builds the intellectual context for our young leaders and the critical thinking skills that are necessary for leaders on the modern battlefield. We've got in our Army, we've got almost 2 generations of leaders. Their context is a counterinsurgency. They lack the context of large-scale operations in the plains of Europe, the Middle East, the Korean Peninsula, or anything like that. They just don't have the context. And so wargaming is a means that we can replicate that and really give them that context and understand that it's a little more complicated, a little more involved than some of the things that they may have experienced. Not to take anything away from their experiences, but it's just different. It truly is. So then let's talk about, the ethical implications of wargaming and what we can get out of that. And, I talked about the various conditions. It's not just physical conditions, but it's also the various mental conditions that you're going to have to think through when we start talking about these combat operations. In the Army doctrinal publication 622 is Leadership in the Profession. And I just want to read a couple excerpts from here. It says, the Army profession is a trusted vocation of soldiers and Army civilians whose collective expertise is the ethical design, generation, support, and application of land power. So, it says specifically ethical application of that. It further goes on and says, character, which is one of the 3 elements of a profession, character, competence, and commitment of the Army profession. Character consists of the moral and ethical qualities of an individual revealed through their decisions and actions. Leaders must consistently demonstrate good character and inspire others to do the same. It further goes on to say leaders must be able to live by them to find moral solutions to diverse problems. Ethical reasoning must occur in everything leaders do, in planning, preparing, executing, and assessing operations. So if we say we've got to have these ethical leaders and we use wargaming to replicate combat operations, then we've got to incorporate ethical wargaming to make sure that we're replicating everything that's going to happen on the battlefield. And so I think this year's theme is absolutely critical to what we want to get out of wargaming. We don't want just people that are just going to figure out how to win at any cost. They've got to do it in accordance with our nation's values, the law of land warfare, and the ethical virtues and things that hold us together as an Army and as a profession. Okay, so it's absolutely integral to as we build these future leaders here at Fort Leavenworth. So, that leads me to the theme and some questions. When we look at ethics and wargaming, I got a couple of questions I'd like you all to contemplate as you continue through this. Wargaming as a tool promotes experiential learning, keeping Fort Leavenworth the intellectual center of the Army. So, we really want to generate some thoughts and make people leave here intellectually stimulated. So, question, how do we wargame ethically? How do you make sure it's not just all about winning? And winning matters. We when we fight wars that the nation expects us to win, But when we're doing these war games, we got to make sure that we're building those sets and reps that are ethical, so that we don't win at the wrong cost. What is unethical wargaming, and how do we avoid it? Again, making sure it's not just winning at any cost. We can't afford that. How do we war game ethical issues? And a couple that immediately came to mind are, torture, treatment of detainees, civilian casualties. But all those issues have come up in the last 20 years, and they're not new issues to warfare or to conflict. So we need to make sure that we are continuing to challenge our leaders how to deal with them, and wargaming is a great tool that we can do that, and then have those hard conversations and make sure that they're thinking through these problems. And then, how can we use wargaming to help develop ethical judgment that reflects our nation's values? As I said in the doctrine, the leadership doctrine, we have been tasked as a profession to win the nation's wars, but to do it in an ethical and a moral manner. And that makes some people may think that that's an oxymoron, but that's what we're expected to do. We are a values-based nation, and we are a value-based army, so we've got to do it the right way, as difficult it is when you're talking about taking people's lives. So I think those are just a few of the questions that we should be asking ourselves and discussing and debating. And so I'm looking forward to hearing the feedback and how all that goes. Once again, welcome to Connections 2021. Thanks for taking part in these important discussions and contributing to the continued promotion of the art and science of wargaming in all the domains. I really appreciate you all being here. Wish it could have been live. We're already planning on how to host it live in the future. And I just told Colonel Lord, there better be a big party for 2024, because that's a bicentennial Kriegspiel. So I don't know, we'll host it, but I expect that to be one hell of a Connections in 2024. So I'll pause there, and if anybody's got any questions, or we can move on, whatever you all want to do. Thanks. Yeah, so the question there, did the War Department, U.S. Army, do any wargaming in the 20s and 30s or World War II? So what I will speak to is the U.S. Army War College in the interwar period. That's what they really focused on, was looking at, you may have heard of the rainbow plans, the various color plans that they had for, a war with Germany, a war with Japan, a war with Mexico, they even had a war plan for the war with British. And so one of the things that they did at the War College was they would break down, do the staff analysis of those plans. They would refine those plans, and then they would do a version of wargaming. I don't know if it was a Kriegspiel like, but I knew they went through the machinations of action, reaction, counteraction, the discussions. And the War Department used the War College to refine those plans over the year. And recently, last year, there was a good article written about Eisenhower's year at the War College and how that really set him up for success, as the commander during World War II, because he went through that deliberate process, not just studying it and being educated on it, but going through all of the different wargaming type experiences to understand the ramifications of some of the plans and decisions that they made. So I'm not sure it may not have looked exactly like we envisioned it, but it was wargaming as we think of it. Over. Does the Air Force have any equivalent capability? Well, I'm not in the Air Force, but I've heard that they are the other service that does have a pretty aggressive and well-developed wargaming system and process. But I can't speak to that. But I got my man Colonel Lord here. I don't know, John, you want to jump in on that? Anything more specific?
They don't use wargaming as aggressively as we do in their specific PME, but they have a course that's similar to SAM's down in Georgia, and they use wargaming there.
Okay, there you go. But that's I'm sure there's some Air Force folks dialed in. That's something you can follow up with them. What does a commander do when faced with lose or win unethically and no time to come up with better plans because the enemy is moving fast? Well, hey, that's a great question. I mean, I think that's one of the things that we want to talk about in Connections this year is, what do you do? And so, the beauty of it is, in the schoolhouse, we can create that scenario and we can see what happens. And then one of the things that's really good in the United States Army is we really like to do after action reviews. And we talk about, okay, why did we do that? Why did we make that decision? And we peel it back. And it's like Matt has said, it's bloodless. It's somebody's pride maybe is the only thing that gets damaged in the process. So I think ideally, if we're doing our jobs as educators here in the college, we are setting those conditions to put people in that situation and see what happens, and then talk about it. We don't like crucify them if they screw it up. We have the conversation and we talk about it and we say, hey, look, let's think about that. I mean, in 1942 and 43, the strategic bombing of Europe was, everybody was like, yep, we got to do this. And then in 1944 and 45, it bombed Dresden, and Churchill started scratching his head going, I'm not really sure we should be doing this. And then Curtis LeMay famously said, we better win this war, because if we don't, we're all going to be tried as war criminals. Because they hadn't war gamed strategic bombing on the scale. I mean, Douay had theorized about it, but they really hadn't gone through all of the things to talk about ahead of time. And so they were dealing with those ethical decisions in real time. And, you can debate and argue whether or not they made the right decisions, but I'd rather we have those conversations ahead of time and really have the tough conversations in the classroom than when things are on the line and it's life or death. So I'm glad we're talking about it here in Connections. Let's see if I can read that. How can the Army accelerate the culture change needed to shift from wargaming as a toy to wargaming as an effective training tool along the lines of preliminary marksmanship training? So I think we're doing that here. We got 1,000 officers, best officers across the world in our Army, and they see wargaming for what it is. Our School for Advanced Military Studies, they are very steeped in wargaming, and they are the planners. They go to that. That's an extra year that they spend here at Fort Leavenworth, and they focus on being planners, and they're spit out, and then they go across the Army at the division level and above. They're the planners. And as a division chief of staff, I knew our SAM's planners were going to run a good war game. And every time that we did an operation, we planned an operation, they were the ones driving that. I talked to them as the chief of staff, said, okay, back brief me on what the plan is. We tweaked left and right, made sure it met the commander's intent. My division commander was a SAM's graduate, so he knew what the standard was. And so it was integral to how that division planned. So I don't think wargaming in the Army, in the officer corps, at the field grade level and above, I don't think it's thought of as a toy. I think it's acknowledged that this is, like I said, it's integral. It's in our doctrine. It's part of the military decision-making process. But I think your point of, hey, can we use board games? Can we use simulations and use that type of wargaming to help drive learning? I think also that's something that we do well here in the Staff College, because we do it in the pre-command course for battalion commanders and brigade commanders. They do a wargame. It's a sim, but we are evolving that to be both a simulation and an analog, so we can get the best of both worlds. And sims come at a high price. I mean, there's a lot of behind the scenes white cell type support that a sim requires. They're expensive. Those types of things, you got to get people smart on them. The analog stuff, that's one of the reasons we developed Land Power, because it's not that hard to understand, and you don't have to have all this, tens of thousands of dollars to pay some contractor to manage your network and your system. So I think we are doing that at the field grade and above level. I know the Marine Corps, in the old, I don't know if it's Marine Corps Gazette, one of their publications in the back page, there's like TDG, Technical Decision Game, I think, that they had, just like a situation that was focused on a lieutenant or a captain scenario. So I think they've embedded that there. But I think, I think people use wargaming. Some folks that say it like it's a pejorative or it's condescending. I don't think those people are in charge. I think those people are limited in their influence, at least at the appropriate levels. I'm not sure I answered the question, so I just don't think it's that big of a challenge. With an entire generation of officers having focused on the coin fight rather than big war, how have they been adjusting to the paradigm shift as they prepare to take on near-peer adversaries? Yeah. Okay. Hey, I'll tell you a quick story, and we'll wrap this up. So I'm a brigade commander at the National Training Center. I got a combat experience company commander. We're fighting against a near-peer threat, and my company commander is upset because the Apaches flying overhead won't bump down his net to come help him deal with this squad that he's in contact with. And he was bitching about this in the AAR, and he didn't know I was there. And I walked up to him. I was like, Dave, you know what those Apaches were doing? They were defeating the enemy brigade counterattack force. You're a Striker company commander. I think you can handle an enemy rifle squad with the resources you've got. I need to go kill tanks with those Apaches. That was in 2015, so that's 6 years ago. The Army is coming a long way. We've got to relearn some lessons, but I think we are doing that. We've been very aggressive at doing that, and we're doing a lot of good things. And I think the focus here in the college and the wargaming at that big Army scale is definitely what we're doing. That was my timer. That was the hook. I'm done, but appreciate the questions. Once again, appreciate everybody being here. And I'm going to turn it back over to Matt or Merle. Thanks, everybody. Educate to win.
Again, it's just an honor and a privilege to have you open the conference. And as I said in private, we are very, very grateful for all the work done by Lieutenant Colonel Hill and his whole team. And you guys really hosted us twice. You were getting ready to do it live, and you changed gears and did it. I think that's a good indication of how flexible and resilient and adaptive our Army is. So thank you, sir, very much, and see everybody at the next event.